Welcome to another day of Too Many Shapes. Previously, I spent a lot of time developing my city, and that gave me the time to finally tackle my biggest, most ambitious, most potential for being a mistake project, the actual purpose that everything you see behind me has for existing, the Citadel for my Doom-themed mega base. Everything before you could almost be considered a nice appetizer compared to what I have coming. I highly recommend checking out my previous 2 episodes about this project, where I explain some of my thought process and inspiration a lot more than I will today. But because I don't expect you to, a quick recap of what I've done so far will do. Everything you see here exists for the purpose of being a front lawn of sorts for the actual build, featuring 2 mountains containing a work in progress, completely unique biome. The Gatekeeper Titan is here to take your coat and jacket before you enter the rest of the base, which is gated off, and this whole area is meant to feel like an unrefined wildland before you enter proper structure and development beyond the gate. Inside is the much less completed pathway featuring 2 skulls with a vaguely evil face looming over this bridge, all meant to be seen from outside the gate. This area will all be completed later when I dedicate a whole episode to terraining the entire-ish area, which will be a lot of fun, and I'm going to be able to talk a little more about the purpose of this specific structure once the Citadel is installed. With you being very briefly caught up now, we can finally move forward with this project, bringing us deeper into this slice of the world. It's time to get started on the most important piece of this whole project. Beforehand, I've already gone ahead and got the bulk of the resources I'll be using for this guy, and before I really get into this build, I decided to get a little bit of it done to explain what's going on a little better before the unstoppable time-lapse music kicks on. The way I'm going to build and have designed the Citadel is pretty much like a stacked cake. A bunch of layers getting smaller until we reach the top, and trust me, we will absolutely reach the top. Anyways, I got a good start with the first layer, which, come to think of it, won't be the first layer because I have to build down, but the first layer for now. As of now, I don't have a ton to say about it, but I just wanted to introduce it and give an idea of the scale I'm working at. I'll talk about details, texturing, color, etc. when I've done the rest I want to do. And honestly, I don't know why I'm stopping y'all here. I want to get the thing done, let the time-lapse music come, it is inevitable. It's a little tall, don't you think? Yeah, this thing is a huge time and resource sink, good lord. But yeah, it's totally worth it. Just to get the disappointment out of the way, no, this isn't done through the back, it's just the front facade. But for the sake of my time and my sanity, I'm going to take care of that part when I can sit back and take care of a little bit at a time over a podcast or something, to hopefully be ready by the time I want to furnish my brand new humble abode. But anyways, yeah, this facade dwarfs everything else I've done. I'll show it off from a distance later, which you'll understand why when I do, but for now, let's talk details. The front central part, starting after the first layer, is pretty much done, and I am very happy with where I landed for the design here. Of course, I am still taking heavy inspiration from the Necrovol Citadel in Doom Eternal, and while at this point I've taken it down my own path, that concept brought me to this cool design that utilizes these many rows of windows. What's special about how I built these windows is my attempt, which I believe I did pretty well, to exaggerate the height and size of the build. See, a challenge I ran into while building this thing was the realization that I'm going to hit build height pretty quickly. I'm so thankful for the Caves and Cliffs update, which gives me more verticality to work with, but I also decided the best place to build the dang thing is 57 blocks above sea level. I don't know how much difference it would have made if I started at Y62, but it's here. I am absolutely not rebuilding it, and you know what? Hard restraints are what bring out the most creativity. Thus, every vertical block I place counts. So, my way of avoiding build height while making it look as tall as possible was by building the windows in a certain way as if they are meant to look like they are built the same size all the way through. See, what I mean is, if it was built typically, the windows would be built the same size going all the way to the top. And obviously because of distance and how our weird eyeballs work, the windows at the top are going to naturally look smaller because of how far away it is. What I have done is essentially stretched out the windows you see on layer 3 a little more each layer until it reaches the top layer, which has the thinnest and tallest windows on the build. This, opposed to being the same window design all the way up, allows me to save space on building more and more layers that are needed to achieve the same feel of verticality, and helps exaggerate how tall the whole thing is, which is especially needed from this point of view up close, where you could argue it really isn't that tall. Definitely some interesting illusionary stuff going on, which I think is very cool. Using a little bit of cheaty camera to take a close look to better explain what I have done, the windows consistently follow this diamond shape, but between layer 3 and 4 I thinned down the same shape to a 1 block gap instead of the 2-ish block gap seen on layer 3. And between layer 4 and 5 I took the same shape as layer 4 and added an extra block of height. The subtle-ish difference between the layers is what allows the illusion I'm going for to happen, which simply is making things at a distance even smaller, compared to a much larger part at the bottom, making that look taller or bigger than it really is. It's really hard to explain honestly, and I hope the idea came through because I think it's a really cool effect and love its purpose, which is again to avoid hitting build height before I want to, and make the thing feel taller than it really is. Oh, and another little thing is that each layer horizontally starts a bit further than the previous, which also helps the illusion by obscuring a bit more of the next layer, once again making the bottom layers look a bit bigger than it is from the bottom point of view. Moving on, it's all on a circle, giving the rounded shape to the walls, which I think is pretty neat, and will absolutely look so much cooler when it is rounded all around. And the deep slate barriers around the windows simply add a nice shape and detail to the whole thing. The center is completely made with tough brick. I'll see about adding gradients or texturing, but as it stands, I think it's at the size where the one color does plenty. Interestingly enough, with the way lighting works, specifically set to 30%, this bridge thing in the top layer looked like a different block, or at least a lot more like stone brick, creating its own weirdly natural gradient. I didn't do that on purpose, but I definitely want to try to take advantage of it for later detailing and coloring. As for the sides, simple pillars with the start of a simple dark to light gradient. That part is pretty much completely undetailed and unfinished compared to what I have in mind, but I haven't decided what in my mind translates to in game yet. I got started with what I'm thinking on the first layer with these big arches creating a neat shape. More of that and maybe additional window details, external additions, like maybe more towers, bridges, sort of stuff could be interesting. Lots of ideas, lots of trialing those ideas, but the point is, there's a ton to be done here, and hopefully by the time I can consider this thing a lot more complete, this specific shot seen in this video of the Citadel will look pretty blank and boring. As of now though, just the front facade alone that I've done already, I would say is maybe 30-40% complete. So much to do, but that's the nature of a mega project like this, and I'm really enjoying the process of building this thing. Speaking of being incomplete, I have 2 more big additions I want to make today, involving that world height I left available, and this big blank wall I have yet to address so far. I'm not going to say more about it right now because I got a lot more annoying to get bulk resources available, and I'm going to let the second full time lapse of the video do the talking. You are gonna love this. To introduce the additions, I would like to start a bit away from the front of my city to take that distant look at the Citadel and star. Yeah, the star is so big, the fog's set to start at a large distance away from the player. Using Bobby Mod's extreme render distance increases, still obscuring half of it. It's ridiculous, it's imposing, It's threatening. It just looks so crazy from far away, both the Citadel and the star. What's crazy is those squared off diagonal pillars are big enough to create a new shape from here, which almost looks like it's rounding off the top of the Citadel. And I gotta tell ya, the Citadel definitely does not have a problem with feeling tall from this perspective. Another piece I had to put a bit of thought into was where I want to place the whole thing to maximize how threatening and visible it is from a distance. Everything was originally quite a bit closer to the front of the mountain, but I ran into the issue with how the hill it sits on obscures what's on top of it, as well as visibility from the fog, which at where it stands now being a good distance farther away, you can see most of what I want you to see, and with the always watching face in front of it, looking big and close, plus the fog, it all makes the thing look farther away and therefore bigger. More illusionary perspective tricks, love me some of those. From the front of the build itself, I'll actually talk about the star. The design is super simple, being 8 points in a circle that are all connected, with an inner star being made out of 8 intersections from the outer star. No real meaning to it, just cool geometry which is being casted from the center of the Citadel. I haven't gone to the energy beam that is actually projecting the star, but for now, this is pretty cool. It should be easy to tell, but I absolutely did not design this thing by hand. That would take forever just from the fact that I would mess up the shape on the first line. But I did in fact hand place the thing, which was a freaking pain. I do not recommend building a big circle with intersecting line weirdness and diagonals that need a dirt block to be placed and removed for pretty much every single block placement. That being said, I think I want to add more outer rings made of glass to make it look more like cloudy fire stuff, with those rings being smoke dissipating from the star itself. That would also take forever, but it's the kind of detail that I need to include that makes the thing look less like a shape awkwardly printed in the sky. But let's be real, who cares about that shape printed in the sky? You want to see the skull. That's why I've kept myself at this point, because as far as I know, anywhere outside the wall, that skull is invisible. It also lets me finally explain the purpose of these towers going up to the Citadel. These skulls and the center face are meant to only be seen and appreciated from outside the walls. Like I said, with the face always watching and the whole thing making the Citadel look farther and therefore bigger than it is. With that out of the way, I'm actually going to stop talking. I'm just going to walk through and let you see what I have done before I explain my thought process. Yes, these walls and towers are a frame. I've done a lot of talk about using illusions and perspective tricks to make things look bigger or smaller, as well as directing your attention to what I want you to see. And this is probably the best example of that. Staring from the gate, you have a narrow vision of it, and by making the skull fill the whole space of what you can see, it looks even bigger, grander, scarier. It alone is bigger than everything in front of it, despite being so far away, and as you approach it, it is the only thing that holds your attention. The floating face obscures most of the Citadel from this point, but it's also at an awkward angle which makes it so there's not a lot of reason to look up from this point. Your attention is on the skull, and the skull keeps that attention as you make your way down, with the arched bridge making it so that as you approach, more is revealed of the skull's jaw, including its bright white teeth, which your eyes are going to be naturally drawn to, due to the bright colors against its dark colored surroundings. By the time the skull is fully visible, nothing is obscured, and the dark to light gradients between the horns and the pillars naturally draws your eyes up to the top of the Citadel, which is now up in your face and dwarfing you. The effect will be a bit better when I do the bottom layers going to the base of this valley, which will hopefully make it all look a little bit grander than it is now. Now for the design of the actual skull. Yes, the skull's actual intention is to be the main entrance to the Citadel. I've decided I am not going to complete the bridge through to the doorway, simply to maintain the effect I just mentioned, but a destroyed bridge would look pretty rad, and I haven't clearly gone into designing that. Premature apologies if you do not have an elytra. The doorway design actually started with the simple concept of a door being the mouth of a face. An idea that's a little silly, inspired a bit by my love for rubber hose cartoon styles, and playing with that concept eventually reminded me of the gladiator boss fight in Doom Eternal, more specifically the shield the monster carries, which is perfect for continuing the theme I am going for. Anyways, between the shield of the gladiator and a bit bit of the Marauder as well from Doom Eternal. I landed on the skull design with the horns of the Marauder and the wild, weird, spiky jaw thing the shield skull has going on. I decided to try my hand at heavy texturing for this one, and I think I did a decent job. I can definitely do better, but I really don't have a ton of experience with this building style. But stuff like this definitely makes for good practice and learning for me to improve with. I made sure to use raw tuff as highlights with darker shades, specifically polished deep slate, used around the outside to better frame and separate the skull shape from the tough brick background it is on. Then a little bit of gradients plus a bit of extra dark deep slate tiles on the bony eyebrows. I think it's alright. The heavy gradient from the polished deep slate to the bright white smooth quartz at the top of its horns is definitely my favorite bit and looks so good. I definitely, like the rest of the Citadel, have some additions I want to make to the skull, but for now, as is, I am very happy with it and the rest of the project so far. But yeah, I'll be real, I think this might be my favorite of any organic I've ever done. I love its shape, I love its color, I love its placement, I love its design, I love what it's referencing, and I'm so proud to have made it. And that's it. I think I have covered everything I needed to for today. Next bit I want to tackle for this project is what will really make the whole thing truly mega, that being the terraforming. You might be able to see there's a ton of terraforming to be had, just to remove the disgusting grass in the first place. On top of that, I have lofty peaks and well colored with texture custom hills in mind. So maybe look forward to that or not, I don't mind either way. That all is going to take forever, probably even longer than this bit, so we'll see how this looks on my schedule because there's a lot of chipping away to be had. Next video though, I have ideas for village expansion, which I am excited about. Good change of pace to keep me from burning out, but you know, right now I'm just happy to be building for the few people who see this. Anyways, too much yapping, wrap this thing up. I've spent so much time on this now, and I've got many hours of replays to put together, so as always, feedback is appreciated, and I will see you all later.